Big thank you needs to go out to Hector for flying over the Fremont factory this morning because he was able to catch the next generation Cybertruck prototype driving around the test track, and we got quite a bit of new information to pull from this, but from the beginning, let's just fully disclose this is still an alpha prototype. This is not a production model. The Cybertruck will be produced at Giga Texas, so acting like any of these specs or any of these designs are confirmed is likely not true, but they are certainly likely more accurate to the production model than the prototypes we've been looking at for the past couple of years, and thankfully it drove around quite a bit. And this is actually technically the first street legal Cybertruck we've ever seen because it has everything necessary for a vehicle to be delivered to a customer. For the first time ever, we see the windshield wiper. Yes, just one on the driver's side of the Cybertruck. Probably the largest windshield wiper I've ever seen. Kind of an interesting design choice to just, have it on the one side. It goes inward and you'll probably miss a lot of the passenger's side end when it's raining and that type of thing, but that was always my biggest question, in all of the Cybertruck update videos I've done in the past. What are the mirrors gonna look like? What do the windshield wipers look like? Now we finally have some answers, and we have a much clearer view at what the side view mirrors should be looking like, and Elon has once again confirmed that they're required to include those mirrors in order to deliver the vehicle, but their goal is to make those mirrors as easy to remove as possible. So it's legal for people to modify the truck. If you want to pop these mirrors off, sounds like Tesla's going to make it fairly simple to do so. However, the windshield wiper is where even Elon himself is a little bit split on the matter. So if you don't like this asymmetrical kind of clunky design of a wiper, don't worry, you're not alone. The Techno King also thinks it looks kind of weird. In terms of manufacturing efficiency, this is probably the simplest way to do this because you just need one little motor in the front of the windshield. The best part is no part. The best process is no process. So you just leave that wiper there. It turns once. You don't even have two wiper motors to worry about like you do with all Teslas. So the ideal scenario that Elon described in a follow-up tweet, which is actually something I've suggested in prior videos, so that basically confirms Elon watches all my content, right? But actually from the beginning, I really appreciated and loved the look of that steel frunk, and it just seamlessly meshes with that glass windshield. So my thought process was, that looks great, let's leave it like that, but if it does start raining, it would be great if the frunk could kind of open up and then windshield wipers would pop out of that when you needed them, and when you don't need them, the frunk would stay closed and you wouldn't even notice it. But Elon himself mentioned in that design it's far more complex, and even though that would be ideal, it is absolutely going to be far more complicated to do a design like that. I don't know for sure what they're agreeing on for production. At least with this prototype, it looks like they want to just go with the single blade, but if you wanted to embed them into the frunk so that they were invisible on sunny days, you would need to water seal the top end of that frunk, still make it openable for everyday people, but even then, if you open up the top, you're gonna have to water seal the sides of that steel frunk as well, which is going to make it look weird and look clunky and probably be very, very difficult to engineer, opposed to just one single motor on the driver's side corner of the windshield that covers most of the whole windshield in a single pass, which should be enough for good visibility, but probably a little annoying if you're on the passenger side, like, hey, you're missing a lot of the rain here. Definitely not a deal breaker in my opinion, but there are a few other details that my friends and I have picked up, so check out the next episode of the Talos of EV podcast if you want to see a more in-depth analysis. But a few of the ones I'll highlight. One point that was brought up by my friend Randy, we don't see the charging door anymore. So on the original prototype, it was like all Teslas where there's a little charge indicator right behind the driver's side back wheel. There's no little charge door on this prototype, so we couldn't find exactly where you're supposed to plug it in. They might be embedding it somewhere in the wheel well we can't see very well, or from the up-close footage we see of the person driving it, it certainly looks like the yoke is still there. Elon has talked about it lots of times in the past that it's supposed to be this future technology bandwagon, so the yoke is likely the way it's going to go. Although, unlike the Model S and X yoke, we still don't really know how they're going to incorporate like the blinker buttons or the autopilot button or the windshield wiper button. All the buttons that are on the new Model S and X, I'm not sure how they're doing it on the Cybertruck yoke, but at least in this prototype, yes, there is still a yoke involved. Another difference, which might just be because of the angle we're looking at from this drone footage, but the bed looks a tad bit smaller to me, especially if you compare the bed size to the actual prototype images Tesla showcased. Maybe it's the angle, I'm still not entirely sure, but it looks like the glass roof section of the truck goes down a lot further over the bed than the prototype did, and there are several shots where we can actually see through the bed, and it really doesn't look very open back there, so maybe this prototype has the mid-gauge mid-gate so that you can actually access the cabin from the vault, and it's possible that because there's a mid-gate now, maybe Tesla's comfortable having a smaller bed because there might be a way to fold down those back seats, but you can visibly see 3 headrests when the Cybertruck is driving away, and at no point did we ever catch this prototype with the vault on, so it might not even be rocking that. Also, in all of this footage, I was never able to catch a look of the rear wheel steering in action, so this prototype might not be sporting that quite yet, and it's also missing the top light bar that we've seen on prototypes before, so I don't expect this to be super duper close to the production model. However, we are noticing that that Tesla glass we saw in the YouTube video they published on their YouTube channel with the curved top seems to be what they're planning for the Cybertruck. The glass is actually curved instead of straight like it was on the prototype, which I'm not exactly sure how I feel about just because it feels a tad more asymmetrical, but the steel on the glass roof section kind of stops once it reaches the windshield and just kind of has this unfinished prototype-y look, which makes sense, it is a prototype, but it at least gives us an idea that Tesla is toying around with what to do to make the Cybertruck officially street legal, what the windshield wipers may end up looking like. If you're trying to build hundreds of thousands of these trucks per year, I understand why you may go with the more simple manufacturing approach, but other slight changes we picked up on is the interior seems to be all black. We don't see that white marble dashboard that we saw in the prototype, and the wheels don't rock any aero caps, so I'm not sure if these are totally different tires from the prototype, but they're certainly not the exact same rims, at least, that we saw on the Cybertruck that they took to New York City and to Giga Texas, and of course had at the unveiling. It's certainly footage we're not really supposed to be seeing, but it's funny, of course, seeing Elon comment so much about it, responding to people saying like, yeah, you can get it in any color you want as long as it's nothing, and he even alluded to the response of someone saying, are we going to be able to wrap it from the factory? He said not at first, but there are third-party wrapping options, of course. I don't know why Elon felt the need to point that out, but it at least pointed to the idea that maybe one day Giga Texas will have its own first-party wrapping service for maybe Cybertruck customization in the future, but they're not going to start out with that, at least. And I'm hoping we can get a more official look at the earnings call in January, which is when Elon is said to give a more updated product roadmap. Hopefully that's primarily going to be about the Cybertruck, because we all have a lot of questions now. A lot of people don't like the mirrors, they don't like the windshield wiper. Sounds like Elon doesn't like it either, so they're probably open to other options. I'm hoping the bed wasn't compromised too much. Just from all these angles, it feels like it's more of a 5.5 foot length than it is 6.5 feet. And if it is true that they're compromising on the bed size or they're compromising on some of the promised specifications, I would tell Tesla, like, it's best to get those numbers out there as soon as possible and get expectations in check. That's why I think it's not a good idea to wait until like a month before deliveries begin and then unveil the new design, because people are going to be taken off by it, and it takes time for people to be comfortable with new designs and new approaches, which is kind of what the general market reaction was to the Cybertruck. It first came out, everyone kind of hated it and thought it was ugly, and then as time went on, people got more comfortable with it, they start to understood the design, and then a bunch of people ended up reserving one, even though they initially weren't a huge fan of it. So we might have a similar reaction here with the windshield wiper. It's different, it's not what we're used to, it's fairly asymmetrical, so we're kind of like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that wiper, but if we're used to it and we're seeing it all the time, it might become the norm and we won't think anything of it. You gotta have windshield wiper on the car. I'm sorry to all the crazy Tesla fans that were hoping for the laser patent or the hydrophobic coating that would just mean water falls right off. Yeah, I don't think that kind of tech is gonna make its debut in the Cybertruck. It needs wipers and it needs side view mirrors, so certainly expect changes to be made before we actually get into fully fledged production. But either way, I'm just excited to see it driving around. It looks great, and as Elon always points out, it looks like CGI except in real life. So given the fact I've been to the Fremont factory, I've seen that test track, and now watching all this footage of it driving around, it makes it feel so much more real, and I can't wait to see what they have in store for us next year. So what do you like about the Cybertruck updated design? What do you not like? All that good stuff. Feel free to let me know down below. Thank you to everyone supporting me over on Patreon, helping me afford my own Tesla. It seriously helps a bunch. And to everyone else, I appreciate you just for watching. Take care. Have a great day.